They say night is the refuge of the damned, where the shadows twist and the blood runs cold. I never believed it until I became one of them, a creature caught between death and unlife, bound by thirst and cursed to stalk the earth beneath a bleeding moon. This is the story of how I fell into darkness, how the night consumed my soul and spat me out, a predator who learns too late that survival demands a price drenched in blood. If you hear the whisper of claws against your window or feel the chill of unseen eyes watching, beware, some hunger never dies. And if you value your life, do not follow me into the shadows, for once you step into my world, you become prey. The air was thick with the copper scent of rain mingled with something far older, something raw and metallic that coated my tongue before the night had even fully claimed the sky, and as the last streaks of sunlight bled from the horizon, I found myself wandering the cobblestone streets of a forgotten city, drawn by a hunger that was no mere appetite but a living, gnawing ache in my veins, a siren call that pulled me toward darkness with every uneven step I took. The buildings loomed like sentinels, their windows empty, eyes staring down as if mourning the souls lost to time, and the shadows curled and bled into the alleys, whispering secrets in a language older than memory, a dialect of thirst and blood that I knew too well, for I was no longer the man I once was but something else entirely, a creature shaped by night and cursed by blood. I remembered the first kill. The hot pulse beneath my fingers as I sank my teeth into warm flesh, the wet rush of life flooding my mouth and flooding my senses with dizzying clarity, and the way the victim's eyes widened in terror before surrendering to the darkness I was becoming. The taste of blood was the only truth left in the world, the only thing that could quiet the savage storm raging inside me, yet with every drink, the hunger only grew sharper, deeper, more relentless. The city itself seemed alive, breathing with the pulse of the undead, the unholy congregation of those who lurked beneath the streets and feasted on the living, their eyes glowing faintly beneath hooded cloaks, their fangs bared in silent promises of torment and ecstasy. I was not alone in this hunger, but the night had no mercy, and the hunt had only just begun. The night thickened as I prowled the labyrinthine alleys, each shadow a predator and prey all at once, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracing my every movement, ancient and patient, a web of whispered legends threading through the veins of the city. The cold pressed against my skin like a shroud, but it was the warmth of blood that called to me, a flame in the freezing darkness, and I followed that flame like a moth desperate for oblivion. The prey I stalked was no innocent. There was a darkness in their own soul, a corruption that fed the vampiric hunger that ran through the city's heart like poison, and I could smell it, rotting flesh and iron and the sharp tang of decay. I cornered them beneath a flickering street lamp, the dim light casting grotesque shadows across cracked stone, and when I struck, the world shattered into a slow, bloody ballet. The snap of bones breaking beneath my grip, the hiss of breath turning to a strangled gurgle, and the warm flood of life bursting like a dam breaking inside me. Every kill was a reminder of my damnation, the fine line between predator and monster blurring until I could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. The taste of their blood was richer than any wine, a symphony of despair and passion, and as I drank, my senses expanded into a terrifying clarity. I saw the threads of fate woven in crimson, the flicker of shadows moving just beyond mortal sight, and the haunting faces of those who had come before me, their bodies broken and their souls chained to the night forever. The city was a nest of vipers, each vampire a creature of terrible beauty and even more terrible hunger, and I was drawn into their world, a twisted court of power and bloodlust where alliances were forged and spilled gore and betrayal lurked in every whispered word. The elders watched me with cold eyes, their fangs gleaming beneath the surface of polite smiles, and I knew they measured me not just by my kills but by the depth of my surrender to the hunger. The nights grew longer and more violent, blood spilled on the cobblestones and soaked into the ancient earth like a stain that would never fade, and the screams of the hunted echoed through the alleys like a perverse lullaby. I learned their rituals. The secret names, the unholy rites whispered beneath the blood moon, and the terrible feasts where flesh was torn and devoured in ecstasy and despair, the mingled scent of fear and lust intoxicating and grotesque. But even in the midst of this carnage, a darkness deeper than hunger gnawed at me, a shadow stalking my soul, a voice whispering from the abyss, promising power at a terrible cost. I felt myself slipping, the line between man and monster eroding beneath the weight of the curse, and the city itself seemed to pulse with a terrible life, a living tomb of bone and blood that held me prisoner in its bloody grasp. In the heart of the city, beneath a cathedral twisted by time and rot, the elders gathered for a covenant written in blood and despair, a pact older than memory that bound us all in chains forged from pain and hunger. The air was thick with incense and the metallic scent of fresh sacrifice, and as I knelt before the altar, blood dripping from clawed hands onto the cracked stone, I felt the weight of countless souls pressing down on me, their anguish a chorus rising from the darkness. The pact was simple yet terrible: eternal life at the cost of eternal thirst, power balanced on the edge of madness, and a hunger that could never be sated. I tasted the bitter wine of my own damnation as the elders sealed my fate, their eyes glowing with unholy fire as they marked me with the ancient sigils, their voices a chant that tore through my mind like knives, binding me to the night forever. I was no longer human. I was a creature of shadow and blood, a predator condemned to stalk the earth beneath a bleeding moon, and the city was my cage, a labyrinth of hunger and death where every heartbeat was a countdown to my next kill. The hunger was a living thing inside me, a storm of claws and teeth tearing at my soul, and no matter how much blood I drank, it only grew stronger, darker, more insatiable. I prowled the city streets like a phantom, a ghost of flesh and shadow, and each kill was a symphony of agony and ecstasy, a dance with death that left me more hollow than before. The victims' faces haunted me, twisted in terror, pleading for mercy that would never come. And yet, I found myself drawn to the darkest corners, to the places where the shadows pooled thick and the air smelled of rot and despair, for there I found others like me, creatures bound by blood and curse, and together we feasted beneath the blood-red sky, our cries rising in a chorus of madness and hunger. But with each passing night, the line between hunter and hunted blurred until I could no longer tell who I was chasing and who was chasing me, and the city itself seemed to breathe with a terrible hunger, a living nightmare that would consume us all. Madness crept into my mind like a poison, twisting memories and warping reality until I could no longer distinguish the living from the dead, the real from the nightmare. I saw visions of fire and blood, of faces melting into shadows and shadows feeding on flesh, and I heard the voice of the curse whispering promises of power and oblivion, weaving its dark magic through my thoughts until I was lost in a labyrinth of despair and rage. I tried to fight it, to cling to the remnants of my humanity, but the hunger was relentless, a beast tearing at the walls of my mind, and every kill only pushed me further into darkness. The city around me became a maze of horrors, a gallery of twisted souls and shattered dreams, and I was trapped in its heart, a prisoner of my own monstrous nature. The elders watched with cold amusement as I fell apart, their faces masks of cruel delight, and I knew that my fate was sealed, that I was destined to become a legend whispered in fear and blood, a warning to those who dared to dance with the night. In the final hours before dawn, I stood on the edge of oblivion, the blood moon sinking beneath the horizon, and I felt the hunger reach its crescendo, a crescendo that promised death or salvation in equal measure. I wandered through the city, each step a beat in a dirge of despair, and I knew that I faced a choice: to surrender fully to the curse and become the monster I was meant to be, or to fight for the last spark of my humanity and risk annihilation. The streets were empty but for shadows, and as the first light of dawn crept over the rooftops, I felt the weight of eternity pressing down on me, the hunger screaming in my veins, and the faces of the victims I had taken flickering before my eyes like ghosts begging for release. With a final, shuddering breath, I embraced the darkness, letting it consume me utterly, and in that moment, I was reborn. Not as a man, but as a creature of the night, bound forever to the blood and shadow that defined my cursed existence. If you find these words, know that I am no longer the man who wrote them, but something else, a shadow in the night, a thirst that can never be quenched, a predator stalking the world beneath a bloodied sky. The curse is real, and it will find you if you listen to the call of darkness, if you chase the whispers behind closed doors, if you seek power in the places where light dies. Do not look for me. Do not seek the night I dwell in. For once you see the hunger in my eyes, once you taste the bitterness of blood and despair, there is no escape. The night is endless. The thirst is eternal. And the hunter is also the hunted. Beware the hunger that waits beneath the surface, the shadows that stretch and reach for your soul, and the blood that stains the hands of those who dare to embrace the night. Once the curse takes hold, it does not loosen its grip. You will become a prisoner of thirst and darkness, a monster wandering through endless nights, forever trapped between life and death, never free, never whole. If you hear the whisper of claws scraping stone, or feel the cold breath of the undead on your neck, do not turn to look. Run. Hide. Pray that you are forgotten. Because in the end, the night will claim you all. And I am its eternal witness.